So here's my story. While I was on my lunch break one day, I bought a scratch-off lottery ticket. I didn't normally do it because I didn't want to waste money, but for some reason today, I decided to do it. I scratched it off and couldn't believe what I was seeing. I won $50,000. I could hardly contain my excitement as I decided I wasn't going back to work today and drove home to surprise my wife with the money. I opened the front door and started calling out for her, but stopped myself when I heard a man's moaning. Then I heard scrambling upstairs, so I rushed up there. I saw him climb out the second-story window. He landed on the small roof over our front porch, then on the ground, and took off running. My wife was screaming and naked, but I wasn't listening to her. I ran out of our house and down the street after him, but lost him. He got too far of a head start. I returned home to my hysterical wife. I told her I won $50,000 and it was going to help me pay for our divorce. She was confused, upset, and angry. She begged me to reconsider divorce, told me they only did it this one time, and that she needed some of the money for her schooling. That last one got me. What a selfish thing to say. I told her I didn't believe a word she said, and I didn't care about her schooling. I added that my feelings for her would never be the same. Now it was like love mixed with hate, and that wasn't going to be my life. She couldn't believe this was happening, and started pulling out her hair and screaming. I tried to get her to stop and said it wouldn't help fix her mistake. Then I asked for her phone. She stopped acting so crazy and looked me straight in the eyes to ask why. I told her it was to check and make sure this only happened one time. She didn't know what to do. She obviously didn't want to give me her phone. I told her she would either give me her phone or I would leave and she'd never see me again. She threw it at me and said if I didn't trust her, then I could check. She probably hoped I wouldn't look long enough to find the bad stuff. Her hopes were in vain. I found her hidden texting app and the messages between her and her AP. She tried to grab her phone again, but I kept it and locked myself in the bathroom. She was freaking out, but it was mostly breathless crying. I scrolled up and up and up, but I couldn't find the top of the messages. There were lots of messages to prove he was at our house, more times than I care to say. I was done. I instantly resented my wife. I knew I'd probably have emotions emerge later, and it would be hard to resist talking to her. I finally came out of the bathroom, and she bombarded me with questions, wanting to know if I'd let it all go and forgive her. I told her I found her messages and asked why she did this to me. She said she was just a woman, and she got bored but didn't mean anything by it. She loved me, but she was excited to do something fun. We were only married for 3 years at this point, but I never thought it would end like this. I told her we were absolutely done. She didn't respect the vows she made to me, and I didn't respect her anymore. I told her to pack her bags, and she looked around the room, probably realizing she had a lot of shit to pack, and she wasn't going to see this room anymore. She sat on the bed, looking overwhelmed and nauseous before she really started sobbing. This was difficult, I can't lie. I had way more pleasant memories about her than bad, but I just let my anger rule me to get me through this. Not out of control, but it was definitely making the hard decisions. I went downstairs and made a bed on the couch and told her I was going to sleep down here until she was ordered to move into court. I said if she didn't leave me alone completely, I would tell her sister what she'd done. Her sister was an extremely respectable woman, and my wife lived up to her expectations as best she could, or so I thought. She covered her mouth, eyes watering, and walked away. She closed herself in the spare room. I filed for divorce the next day. I gave my father the secret of what I was dealing with. He was with me emotionally. He lived pretty far, so he was there for me across miles. I appreciate him. My mom left my life when I was 6. I had 2 best friends that I also told my experience to. They met me at a park, and we talked and walked. Meanwhile, my wife was miserable. She hadn't left her room, but she did text me to ask for money. What a way to show what was on her mind. Our fridge was full. We were stocked on all our toiletries. I asked her what she wanted it for. She said that didn't matter. She was still my wife at the moment, so she was entitled to some of my lottery winnings and income. I contacted my lawyer, and he gave me the idea to include a post-nup agreement in favor of myself in the divorce papers. I left the pile of papers on the table to await her signatures. Since she didn't have money to consult a lawyer, she signed them all. I was so thrilled I didn't have to give her anything now. She had a short time allowed for her to move. She was not happy at all. She ended up telling her sister what happened so she could come get her. I wondered where AP went. A little birdie told me AP was already seeing another woman, so she gave up our new marriage for a man that dropped her like a hot potato. As far as I know, she still lives with her sister, and her sister hasn't been very welcoming. She doesn't have a very large place to live and wasn't expecting to have to divide her living space. I've since started dating, and it's pretty fun, even though I was used to a steady relationship. I hope you all found my story inspiring in one way or another. Don't cheat on your spouse. Wow, OP, you made some wonderful decisions in spite of what you were going through. I am so sorry your wife didn't honor you or the vows she took with you. It's pretty crazy that you won a lot of money and wanted to surprise your wife, only to find out what she was choosing to do behind your back. I'm glad you chose to file for divorce and did it so promptly. It's only karma that she had to turn to her sister and role model for help, having to face her criticism. I admire your self-control and reasonable actions. I'm sure you'll find a woman that values and respects you as her husband instead of believing she was entitled to have meaningless sex because she was bored. I believe you'll be able to keep moving forward, even when it gets a little harder. You have a good head on your shoulders, and obviously know you deserve better than what you just went through. I wish you the best of luck, OP. Now let's get into today's second story. My wife, 30, and I, 34, were married for 5 years, and she worked at a place where one of the groomsmen from our wedding worked. He was still good friends with me, and he was pretty surprised when one of his new coworkers showed him a picture of his girlfriend. This dude's girlfriend of 1 year was my wife. So my friend told another one of our mutual friends what he found out, and he added this guy on Facebook so he could show me the pictures of him and my wife. They asked me to meet them at a bar to hang out, and while I did, my wife went out with her friends. As soon as I got to my friends, they told me they would be there for emotional support through what they were about to tell me. I instantly tensed up. I couldn't help it. They told me what they knew and showed me his profile, which had a picture of him and my wife on it. I couldn't believe how openly he was dating her, like she wasn't worried I'd find out. Her profile was set to private, and our relationship status said we were married to each other, but his relationship status also said he was married to my wife. I clicked on that profile link, and it was the second account my wife made. She was living a double life, apparently for the last year. She worked from home, but sometimes she told me she worked from the park or a cafe. I worked, so I wasn't able to follow her or validate what she was saying, but I believed her. Sometimes she sent me pictures to prove where she was, but for all I know, he was sitting next to her just out of view. I asked them to come with me back to my house, and they agreed. We drank a 6-pack and waited for my wife to come home. When she entered, I let her put down her purse before I said, "We need to talk." A very worrisome thing to hear in a relationship. She looked terrified, like a scared rabbit. I asked her to sit down, and she said she couldn't. I pulled up the guy's profile on Facebook and showed it to her. She immediately turned red and started crying. She was trying hard not to, but her body was falling apart. She said she was so sorry and didn't know why she did this or kept it going for so long. She said she became friends with him through a gaming app on her phone. She didn't think anything of it, just enjoyed messaging him sometimes, but then he wanted to meet up. They did, and she liked him a lot. She started looking forward to his messages and made arrangements to meet up again and again to talk and hang out until they had sex for the first time. When he asked her out, she couldn't say no. She'd fallen in love. I told her the problem was she started talking to a man behind my back. She didn't tell me about him at all, otherwise I would have been able to keep an eye on it. I told her if she never intended for it to escalate, she should have told me about him right away and never agreed to meet him in person. That was her poor decision, as it was to sleep with him, and now she was going to go through a divorce. My friends nodded slightly, making eye contact with me. I swear it gave me strength. They helped me to discover the truth. I genuinely loved them at this point for being my real friends. My wife broke down, sitting on the couch and pleading with me to reconsider. I told her she should have reconsidered this affair at any point before now, and she didn't. I told her to get out. She knew it was my apartment. My aunt was renting it to me. She couldn't believe this was happening, and she closed herself in the bedroom. I assumed she was packing. She came out 45 minutes later with one large packed suitcase, saying she'd come back for more in a few days. Curiosity got me, and I asked where she was going to stay. She said I wouldn't want to know. How humble of her. I couldn't be bothered about it. We were history, and I would find a new and hopefully loyal woman. So she left, and she never came back for her stuff. AP dumped her 1 year later, and she was only able to stay in her brother's renovated shed. It was extremely small and smelled like mold. I remember from when I was there once. I don't feel bad for her, and I did find a nice girl to start dating. It's actually hard to take it slow because I became accustomed to a serious relationship. I've had to use a lot of self-control to keep myself from becoming too serious or attached too quickly. I've started to value myself way more than I ever have before and enjoy my own company without anyone else. I have a pet bird, and he sits with me often. I also go out with my aforementioned friends and write letters to a pen pal. I started growing plants as well. I guess I'm a botanist now. OP, you have gone through a very traumatic experience. Your wife chose to start an affair just 4 years after marrying you. You were right when you said she shouldn't have started talking to him without telling you. It's just good sense to keep your spouse involved with all of the relationships you maintain. It's honesty and builds trust. There's no reason a spouse needs to flirt with another person or get compliments or attention from another person. They might enjoy it because their ego is getting out of hand. When people know and understand the value of humility and communication with their spouse, they should be able to keep choosing to give love and care to their spouse. It's so good to hear that you've remained independent during your dating experience and have learned to value yourself. Thank you for sharing your story. I wish you the best of luck going forward, and am happy to hear you found something that makes you happy. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care.